My wife admitted to me that she wants to sleep with other men while staying married to me. I filed for divorce and married another woman, and she didn't care. How many men have found themselves on the receiving end of the phrase, "If you love me, you'll let me do this"? For me, it was during what should have been a romantic dinner, celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary. That night, my world collapsed. My beautiful 30-year-old wife, Rachel, dropped a bombshell on me. She said she wanted to sleep with other men while still being married to me. She didn't sugarcoat it or lead up to it gently. It just fell out of her mouth like it was the most natural thing in the world. We were sitting at one of our favorite restaurants, a high-end spot with white tablecloths, soft lighting, and an impressive wine list. I had gone all out for this occasion. Not only had I made a reservation at a restaurant we hadn't visited in a while, but I'd also bought her a necklace she had been hinting about for months. The price tag was steep, close to $1,200, but I figured it was worth it to make her happy. That night, as we sat together, something about her demeanor was off. She wasn't relaxed, wasn't smiling as much as she usually did. Her eyes kept shifting around the room, and she barely made eye contact with me. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation light. She nodded, but I could tell she was lying. I didn't press her, though. I figured she would open up eventually. I thought maybe she was anxious about something at work, or maybe we were finally going to have a serious conversation about starting a family. We'd put it off for years because we both agreed we wanted to be more financially stable before having kids. But I was ready now, and I thought maybe she was too. So, I waited. As we finished the main course and sipped another glass of wine, she finally said it. "John, I need to tell you something." Her voice was calm, too calm for what was about to follow. I put my glass down and looked at her, expecting something big but not prepared for the bomb that was about to drop. "I've been thinking a lot about our marriage, and I need to explore things outside of it." I blinked, trying to process what she had just said. Explore things outside of it? What does that even mean, Rachel? She avoided my gaze. "I need to explore who I am, and I feel like I need freedom." My stomach dropped. "Freedom?" I repeated, the word feeling foreign in the context of our relationship. "What exactly are you asking me for?" She took a deep breath before answering. "I think I need to see other people. I've thought about this for a while, and I want your understanding before I do anything." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words just wouldn't come out. My mind was racing. Was she serious? Did she think I'd just sit there and let her go out and sleep with other men? Was this some kind of sick joke? "You're telling me you want to sleep with other men, and you want my permission?" I finally managed to say. She looked uncomfortable but didn't back down. "I'm not saying I don't love you, John. I do love you, and I want to stay married to you. I just need more." More. My voice was rising, and I realized that some of the other diners were probably overhearing us. "You need more than what I'm giving you?" She quickly shushed me, glancing nervously around the room. "Please, keep your voice down." I realized she had chosen a public place to tell me this on purpose. She thought I wouldn't make a scene if we were in a nice restaurant, surrounded by other people. She had calculated this carefully. My blood was boiling. The romantic dinner, the necklace, all of it now felt like a cruel setup. "Why?" I asked, my voice quieter but filled with anger. "Why do you want to sleep with other men? Are you leaving me?" She shook her head quickly. "No, John. I'm not leaving you. I just feel like there's something missing, and I need to figure out what it is. I believe this will help me be a better wife to you in the long run." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was trying to sell this to me as if it would improve our marriage, as if her having sex with other men would somehow make her a better partner. The absurdity of it all made my head spin. I couldn't even look at her. I pushed my chair back and stood up, feeling like I needed air. "I can't do this," I muttered. "John, where are you going?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I need to get out of here," I said, grabbing my jacket. "You should take a cab home." I walked out of the restaurant, my mind numb and my chest tight. I couldn't believe what had just happened. The woman I had been married to for 5 years had just asked for my blessing to sleep with other men. How could everything fall apart so quickly? I got into my car and drove aimlessly for hours. I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't care. I just needed to be alone, away from everything. Eventually, I pulled into a deserted parking lot and turned off the engine. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes, hoping to wake up and find out this had all been some twisted nightmare. But it wasn't. This was my reality now. I woke up the next morning with a stiff neck and a pounding headache. I was still in the parking lot, unsure of how I had even ended up there. My phone was dead, so I plugged it into the car charger and waited as it powered up. The moment it turned on, messages and missed calls from Rachel flooded the screen. She wanted to know where I was, if I was okay, and when I was coming home. I ignored them all. I found a small diner nearby and went in for some breakfast and coffee. As I sat at the counter, I tried to think about what I was going to do next. My marriage was over, at least as far as I was concerned. There was no coming back from this. I couldn't let my wife go off and sleep with other men and then come back like nothing had changed. The trust was gone. I didn't even know if I could look at her the same way again. After a few cups of coffee and some eggs, I decided it was time to face the situation head-on. I needed to go home and confront her properly, but I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just fly off the handle and scream at her. That wouldn't solve anything. I needed a plan. When I pulled into the driveway, Rachel was already waiting at the door. She rushed out to meet me, looking worried. "John, where have you been? I was so scared something happened to you." "I'm fine," I said, brushing past her. "But we need to talk." She followed me inside, clearly anxious about what was coming. I went straight to the kitchen, poured myself another cup of coffee, and sat down at the table. "Okay, Rachel," I said, "I need you to explain to me again what it is you're asking for. I need to hear it clearly." She hesitated, but then sat down across from me. "I need to feel validated, John. I don't feel like my needs are being met, and I want to explore who I am. I think this is the only way I can figure that out." "So you don't know what your needs are, but you're planning to figure it out by sleeping with other men?" I asked, my tone sharp. "I'm not saying it's all about sex," she replied quickly. "It's about connection, about feeling things that I haven't felt in a while. And you think this is going to help our marriage?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes," she said. "I think it will make me a better partner for you." I couldn't help but laugh, though it wasn't out of amusement. "Rachel, do you even hear yourself? You're asking me to let you go out and sleep with other people while we're still married, and you think that's going to help us?" She looked down at the table, not meeting my gaze. "It's just something I need to do, John. I hope you can understand." I shook my head. "No, I don't understand. I don't understand how you could think this is okay. We made vows to each other, Rachel. Vows to be faithful." She didn't respond. "So what's your plan?" I asked after a long silence. "Are you going to move out while you explore yourself? Or do you expect to do all this while still living here?" She looked up, surprised. "I wasn't planning to leave. I thought I could stay here with you." I laughed again, this time in disbelief. "You think I'm going to sit around while you go out and sleep with other men?" "No, Rachel, that's not happening. If this is what you want to do, you're moving out. You can go stay with a friend or get your own place. But you're not doing this while living in our home." She looked shocked. "But where would I go?" "I don't know," I said coldly. "Maybe you can stay with Jessica. You two seem pretty close these days. Or maybe you can get an apartment. But you're not staying here while you do this." Rachel was quiet for a long time. I could tell she hadn't expected me to react this way. She probably thought I would be more understanding, that I would let her have her freedom without a fight. But I wasn't that kind of man. I wasn't going to be a doormat. "Okay," she finally said. "I'll figure something out." I nodded. "Good. And in the meantime, I want you to move your things into the guest room. I can't share a bed with you right now." She looked hurt, but she didn't argue. She knew she was losing me, but she was too stubborn to back down from her decision. Over the next few days, Rachel made arrangements to stay with Jessica, a friend of hers who had gone through a messy divorce a few years ago. I wasn't surprised that she was running to her. Jessica had been a bad influence from the start, always talking about how marriage was overrated and how people should be free to do what they wanted. I suspected she had something to do with Rachel's sudden desire for freedom. The day Rachel packed her things and left, I watched her load up her car. She paused at the door, as if she was waiting for me to say something, but I didn't. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choice. The following weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I threw myself into work, spent more time at the gym, and avoided being at home as much as possible. I didn't hear from Rachel much, aside from the occasional text about forwarding her mail. I had no idea what she was doing, and I didn't want to know. Eventually, I decided to consult a lawyer. I wasn't sure if I wanted a divorce yet, but I needed to be prepared in case things didn't get better. The lawyer I met with was understanding and helped me lay out my options. We drafted a preliminary plan, but I didn't file anything just yet. Then, about a month after she left, Rachel showed up at the house unannounced. She rang the doorbell, and when I opened the door, she was standing there with a confused look on her face. "My key doesn't work," she said. "That's because I changed the locks," I replied flatly. She looked surprised. "Why would you do that?" "I'm coming home." I crossed my arms, blocking her path. "You're not coming home, Rachel. Not while you're still seeing other people." Her face fell. "John, I don't want to fight. Can't we just move past this?" I shook my head. "No, we can't. You made your choice, Rachel. You chose to leave, to go sleep with other men. I'm not going to pretend like everything's fine now." She looked like she was going to cry. "But I still love you, John. I want to be with you." I sighed. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this in the first place." There it was, the truth she didn't want to hear. She had tried to justify her actions, tried to convince herself that it was all for the greater good, but deep down, she knew she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Take your things," I said, stepping aside. "You can have whatever's left in the house, but you're not staying here." She looked devastated, but she didn't argue. She went to the garage, collected a few boxes, and left without another word. I knew that this was the end. There was no going back now. Over the next few weeks, we finalized the divorce. It was a clean break, no fights over assets or money. We didn't have kids, so that made things easier. By the time it was all over, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had lost the woman I thought I would spend my life with, but in the end, I had gained something more valuable, my self-respect. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Rachel's life hadn't turned out the way she had expected. The men she had been seeing didn't stick around, and she ended up pregnant by a married man who had no intention of leaving his wife. Her reputation took a nosedive, and she eventually moved out of state to start over. As for me, I moved on. I met someone new, a woman who valued loyalty and trust. We took things slow, and I made sure to build a foundation of respect and understanding. It wasn't easy, but I had learned from my mistakes. In the end, I realized that love isn't about letting someone do whatever they want. Love is about mutual respect, about commitment, and about staying true to the promises you make. Rachel never understood that, but I did. And that's why I was able to move forward, stronger and wiser than before. A few years passed since my divorce from Rachel, and life had started to feel normal again. I had rebuilt my confidence, my career was in a good place, and I had even begun a serious relationship with someone new, Amanda. She was everything I hadn't realized I needed in a partner. She was caring, intelligent, and, most importantly, she valued loyalty as much as I did. Our relationship grew naturally, without any of the drama or hidden agendas that I had experienced with Rachel. Amanda and I met through mutual friends. I was cautious at first, hesitant to dive too deep into anything too soon after the whirlwind I had been through. But Amanda had a calming presence, and she never pushed me to move faster than I was ready for. She understood my need for space and was patient in ways that reminded me what a true partnership was supposed to look like. A year into our relationship, I found myself thinking about the future again. The idea of marriage, which had once left a bitter taste in my mouth, was beginning to feel like a possibility. Amanda and I talked about it openly, and for the first time in years, the thought of settling down didn't scare me. It felt right. However, just as things were beginning to settle into a rhythm, I received a message that pulled me back into the past. It was from Rachel. After years of silence, there she was, in my inbox. Her message was short, just a few lines asking if we could meet up. She said she wanted to talk and apologize for everything that had happened. She didn't say much more than that, but I could feel the weight of her words. My initial reaction was to ignore the message. I didn't want to dredge up old memories, especially not now that I had moved on and was happy with Amanda. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that maybe hearing Rachel out would bring some closure. Part of me wanted to know what had happened to her after everything fell apart. I also knew that if I didn't respond, the curiosity would gnaw at me. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. We decided on a neutral place, a coffee shop in a different part of town that neither of us frequented. I didn't tell Amanda about the meeting right away, mostly because I wasn't sure how I felt about it myself. It was just a conversation, I told myself. Nothing more. When the day of the meeting came, I arrived at the coffee shop early, grabbing a table in the back corner where we wouldn't be easily seen by anyone who might recognize us. I had no idea what to expect from Rachel. Part of me worried that she might try to rekindle something, though I doubted she had any illusions that I'd take her back. Still, the uncertainty made me anxious. When Rachel walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked different, tired, older than her years, like life had worn her down since the last time I had seen her. There was no sign of the vibrant, confident woman I had once loved. She smiled weakly when she saw me and made her way to the table. "John," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. "Rachel," I replied, nodding slightly. "It's been a long time." She sat down across from me, nervously fidgeting with the coffee cup she had just ordered. For a few moments, we sat in awkward silence, neither of us knowing quite where to start. Finally, she spoke. "I've thought about this conversation a lot," she began. "I know it's probably the last thing you want to hear, but I wanted to apologize to you for everything." I didn't say anything right away, waiting to hear what else she had to say. "I made a huge mistake," she continued, her voice cracking slightly. "What I did to you, to our marriage, it was wrong. I thought I needed something else, but all I did was destroy everything good in my life. I've been living with that regret for a long time." Hearing her speak so candidly about her regrets caught me off guard. I had prepared myself for anger, for defensiveness, but what I saw in front of me was a woman broken by her own choices. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but the larger part of me remembered the pain she had caused. "I don't know what you want me to say, Rachel," I finally responded. "I'm glad you realized what you did, but I'm not sure there's anything left to discuss. You made your choice." "I know," she said quickly. "I know I did. And I'm not here to ask for anything. I needed to tell you how sorry I am. You deserved better than what I did to you." I stared at her for a moment, unsure how to respond. In some way, it felt good to hear her admit her mistakes. But at the same time, it didn't change the past. No apology could undo the damage she had done. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully. "But you have to understand, I've moved on. I'm in a good place now. I'm happy." Rachel nodded, her eyes dropping to the table. "I'm glad you're happy, John. You deserve that." There was another long silence, and I realized that Rachel was struggling to keep herself together. She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't know how to. So, I made it easier for her. "How have you been?" I asked, more out of politeness than actual curiosity. She let out a long sigh, as if the question had been weighing on her. "Not great," she admitted. "Things haven't turned out the way I thought they would." She went on to tell me about her life since our divorce. After moving in with Jessica, she had continued seeing the men she met at the clubs, but none of those relationships lasted. Most of them, it seemed, were only interested in the physical aspect of things, and once they got what they wanted, they disappeared. She admitted that she had felt used and discarded by the very men she had thought would fulfill her. Eventually, Rachel had to face the reality that her search for freedom had left her lonelier than ever. Her relationship with Jessica had soured too. Apparently, living with someone who constantly encouraged her bad decisions wasn't as fun as she had thought. In fact, Jessica had moved on to a new group of friends and had left Rachel behind. And then came the final blow. Rachel had become pregnant during one of her flings, but the father wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. He was married, and she hadn't known that until after the fact. She had ended up going through the pregnancy alone, and though she loved her child, it was clear that single motherhood had been a struggle for her. Listening to her story, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of pity and anger. I pitied her for the choices she had made, for the life she had thrown away. But I was also angry because none of this had to happen. She had ruined our marriage for a fleeting sense of excitement that had never materialized the way she had hoped. "I didn't come here to make you feel sorry for me," she said quietly. "I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I regret it more than you'll ever know." I nodded slowly. "Rachel, I'm sorry your life turned out this way. I really am. But there's nothing I can do to change it." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I know. I just wanted to tell you. And I'm glad you're happy now. You deserve to be." We talked for a little while longer, but there wasn't much more to say. When she left, I felt a strange sense of closure. It was like a chapter of my life that had been left open had finally come to an end. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. That night, when I got home, I told Amanda about the meeting. I was honest with her about everything. Rachel's apology, the life she had been living, and how I felt after seeing her. Amanda listened quietly, her face thoughtful. "Do you feel better?" she asked when I finished. "I think so," I replied. "It's like I can finally put it all behind me." Amanda smiled gently. "I'm glad. You deserve peace, John." Over the next few months, Amanda and I continued to grow closer. The specter of Rachel's betrayal no longer loomed over me. I had faced it, acknowledged it, and moved past it. Now, I could focus entirely on the future. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, Amanda turned to me and asked, "Have you thought about what you want to do next? I mean, with us?" I looked at her, a small smile playing on my lips. "I have, and I think I know exactly what I want." Amanda raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh, and what's that?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Amanda's eyes widened in surprise as I opened it to reveal the engagement ring I had been holding onto for weeks. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," I said softly. "Amanda, will you marry me?" For a moment, Amanda just stared at the ring, her eyes filling with tears. Then, she threw her arms around me and whispered, "Yes, yes, of course." In that moment, I felt a wave of relief and joy wash over me. I had found my way through the wreckage of my past, and now I was building something new, something better. Amanda and I were partners in every sense of the word, and I knew that together, we could face whatever life threw our way. As we began planning our future together, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. I had learned some hard lessons about love, trust, and the importance of knowing your own worth. But in the end, those lessons had made me stronger, and they had led me to Amanda, the woman who would stand by my side through it all. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. The months following my proposal to Amanda were filled with excitement, planning, and a sense of forward momentum I hadn't felt in years. We were engaged, and for the first time in a long while, life felt solid, stable, like I was building something real with someone who valued me just as much as I valued her. Wedding planning was in full swing, and we spent hours discussing venues, guest lists, and details I never thought I'd care about. But with Amanda, it all felt right. Every now and then, a part of me would think back to the wreckage of my marriage with Rachel, but it was more like recalling a bad dream than reliving it. She was in my past, and I had moved on. Amanda never once questioned my dedication to her, and that trust between us was something I treasured more than I could put into words. One Saturday morning, as Amanda and I sat at the breakfast table, she looked at me thoughtfully. "John," she began, "have you ever thought about reaching out to Rachel again? Not to rekindle anything, obviously, but just to, I don't know, check in? Make sure she's okay?" Her question surprised me. It wasn't that I hadn't thought about Rachel now and then. I had. But after our conversation at the coffee shop, I had felt like that chapter of my life was closed for good. I had no reason to reach out to her again, and I didn't feel like it was necessary. "Honestly," I said, "I haven't thought much about it. I mean, we've both moved on. She's living her life, and I'm living mine. I don't see what reaching out would accomplish." Amanda nodded, understanding. "I get it," she said. "I just wondered if maybe there were any loose ends, you know? Anything left unsaid." I leaned back in my chair, considering her words. "I think we said everything that needed to be said the last time we spoke," I replied. She apologized, and I accepted it. That was enough for me. Amanda smiled softly. That's all that matters then. Life continued smoothly after that. Amanda and I finalized the details for our wedding, booked the venue, and sent out invitations. Everything was falling into place, and I was happier than I had ever been. It was a simple, quiet happiness, the kind that comes from knowing you're with the right person, building a future together. But as the wedding date drew closer, I received another message from Rachel. This time, it wasn't through a social media app or email. It was a letter. A handwritten letter that showed up in my mailbox one morning, sealed in a plain white envelope. I wasn't expecting it, and seeing her familiar handwriting brought back memories I had long since buried. I stood in the kitchen, holding the envelope in my hand, unsure if I should open it. What could she possibly have to say now? What more could she want from me? I debated tossing it in the trash and forgetting about it, but curiosity got the better of me. I took a deep breath, sat down at the table, and carefully opened the envelope. The letter was short, just a few paragraphs, but as I read it, I realized that it wasn't the kind of letter I had expected. John, I'm not sure if you'll even read this, but I hope you do. First, I want to say that I've thought about our conversation a lot, and I've tried to take responsibility for the choices I made. I know you're probably tired of hearing me say I'm sorry, but I want you to know that it's something I carry with me every day. Life hasn't been easy for me since we split. I'm not writing to make excuses or to beg for sympathy. I just wanted you to know that I've been working on myself, trying to fix the things that went wrong in my life. I've been in therapy for a while now, and it's helped me see things more clearly. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm getting back to who I used to be. I also wanted to let you know that I heard about your engagement to Amanda. I'm genuinely happy for you, John. She seems like a wonderful woman, and I'm glad you found someone who makes you happy. You deserve that. I've moved back to the city, and I'm working on building a life for me and my daughter. It's been hard, but I'm trying to do things right this time. I don't expect anything from you. No response, no acknowledgement. I just wanted to let you know that I'm okay, and I hope you are too. Take care, Rachel. The letter was a surprise. I wasn't sure what I had expected when I opened it, but it wasn't this. There was no bitterness in her words, no plea for reconciliation or drama. Just a simple, heartfelt message that seemed to signal that she had come to terms with what had happened between us. It was closure, in a way I hadn't expected. I read the letter twice before folding it and placing it back in the envelope. For a few moments, I sat there in silence, unsure what to do with the letter. Part of me wanted to respond, to acknowledge that I had read it and wish her well. But the larger part of me felt like it was best to leave things where they were. We had said all that needed to be said, and her letter felt like a final punctuation mark on our shared history. When Amanda came home later that day, I showed her the letter. She read it carefully, her expression thoughtful. She seems like she's in a better place, Amanda said, handing the letter back to me. Yeah, she does, I agreed. Amanda gave me a small smile. Are you okay with it? How are you feeling? I shrugged. I'm okay. I'm glad she's doing better. But honestly, this just makes me more certain that we've both moved on. Amanda nodded. That's good. I'm glad you feel that way. I tucked the letter away in a drawer, not intending to dwell on it any longer. It was a piece of the past, and I was focused on the future. The day of our wedding finally arrived, and it was perfect. Amanda and I had chosen a small outdoor venue by a lake, surrounded by close friends and family. The weather was beautiful, a clear, sunny day with a light breeze, and everything fell into place just as we had hoped. Amanda looked stunning in her dress, her smile lighting up the entire day. As I stood at the altar, watching her walk down the aisle, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and gratitude. This was where I was meant to be, with the woman I was meant to be with. All the pain and heartache I had endured in the past had led me to this moment, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. The ceremony was intimate and heartfelt. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves, promising to love and support each other through whatever life threw our way. As I slipped the ring onto Amanda's finger, I felt the weight of those promises, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, I felt ready. When the officiant declared us husband and wife, and I kissed Amanda, I knew I had found what I had been searching for all along. A partner who saw me, respected me, and loved me for who I was. The reception that followed was a joyful celebration. Friends and family danced, laughed, and shared stories, and Amanda and I spent the night surrounded by love and support. It was everything I had ever wanted, and more. As the night wore on and the guests began to leave, Amanda and I found ourselves sitting by the edge of the lake, watching the stars reflect on the water. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. "This is it," she said softly. "This is what we've been waiting for." "Yeah," I agreed. "It's perfect." We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying the peace of the moment. Everything felt right, like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. "I'm excited for our life together," Amanda said after a while. "Whatever comes next, I'm ready for it." I smiled. "Me too." As we sat there, the future stretched out before us, full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could look forward to it without any hesitation, without any lingering doubts or fears. I was free, free from the ghosts of my past, free to build a life with the woman I loved. And that was all I had ever wanted. Life after the wedding settled into a pleasant rhythm. Amanda and I moved into a new house, a charming place on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by trees and nature. It was quiet, peaceful, and exactly what we had both wanted. We spent our weekends hiking, exploring, and making plans for the future. We talked about everything: travel, starting a family, growing old together. The future felt bright and full of promise. As time passed, I found myself reflecting less and less on the past. Rachel's letter remained tucked away in that drawer, untouched. I didn't feel the need to revisit it. My life had moved on, and so had hers. It was as simple as that. One day, as Amanda and I were sitting on the porch of our home, sipping coffee and watching the sun set over the trees, she turned to me with a soft smile. "You know," she said, "I've been thinking about the future." "Oh." I raised an eyebrow, curious. She nodded, her smile widening. "I think it's time we talk about starting a family." I felt my heart swell with happiness. Amanda and I had always talked about having kids someday, but we had wanted to take our time, enjoy our life together first. But now, sitting there with her, I knew we were ready. "I think you're right," I said, smiling back at her. "It's time." We spent the rest of the evening talking about our hopes and dreams for the family we would build together. It felt like the final piece of the puzzle was falling into place. As the years went by, Amanda and I welcomed two beautiful children into our lives, a boy and a girl. Parenthood was challenging at times, but it was also the most rewarding experience of my life. Watching Amanda with our children, seeing the love and care she poured into them, made me fall in love with her all over again. Life wasn't always easy. There were tough days, sleepless nights, and moments of doubt. But through it all, Amanda and I remained a team. We faced every challenge together, just as we had promised to do on our wedding day. Looking back now, I realize how far I've come. The man who had once been devastated by betrayal, who had felt like his world had fallen apart, had found love, happiness, and purpose once again. Amanda was my partner, my best friend, and the mother of my children. She had helped me rebuild my life in ways I never thought possible. And as I sit here today, surrounded by my family, I know without a doubt that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. The past is behind me, and the future is bright. As the years passed, Amanda and I continued to build the life we had always dreamed of. Our two kids, Ethan and Lily, grew up quickly, filling our home with laughter, endless energy, and the kind of joy I never knew was possible before becoming a father. Life was a whirlwind of school activities, soccer games, piano recitals, and family vacations. Yet, even in the chaos of raising a family, Amanda and I made it a priority to stay connected. We had built something special together, and we both knew how important it was to keep nurturing our relationship even as the demands of parenthood piled up. There were nights when we would collapse into bed, exhausted from the day, but we'd still make time to talk, to check in with each other. Some days it was nothing more than a quick chat about the kids or work, but other nights, we'd stay up late, sharing our hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. It was in those quiet moments that I was reminded just how lucky I was to have found her. Amanda and I had grown into an unshakable partnership, one where trust and love were the foundation of everything we did. We'd been through ups and downs, challenges big and small, but we faced them together, always as a team. And that made all the difference. One summer, we decided to take a family road trip. The kids were old enough to appreciate traveling, and we thought it would be a fun way to make some memories before they got too caught up in their own lives, because I could already see how fast time was slipping through our fingers. The plan was to drive cross-country, hitting a few national parks and some of those quirky roadside attractions that seem to pop up in the middle of nowhere. We packed up the car, loaded the kids with snacks and entertainment for the long drive, and set off on what would turn out to be one of the most memorable trips of our lives. The first few days were everything we had hoped for. Sunny weather, scenic drives, and endless laughter. We hiked through beautiful landscapes, took way too many pictures, and spent the nights camping under the stars. It felt like we were in a bubble of happiness, free from the stresses of work and everyday responsibilities. Amanda and I took turns driving, and while the kids were content in the back seat, we shared quiet conversations up front, just the two of us, like we had done so many times before. But halfway through the trip, something unexpected happened. We had just finished visiting a park and were heading to the next destination when Amanda received a phone call. She had been keeping her phone off for most of the trip, so I knew it must be important if she turned it on. She glanced at the screen and I saw her expression change, a flicker of something between surprise and discomfort. "I'll be right back," she said, stepping out of the car to take the call. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was something from work, or a friend needing to check in. But when she came back, I could tell something was bothering her. She sat quietly for a moment before speaking. "John," she said slowly, "that was Rachel." The name hit me like a cold shock to the system. Rachel, my ex-wife, the woman who had once shattered my world, and the person I hadn't thought about in years. Since our last brief exchange, a letter that gave me closure, I had moved on completely. I hadn't expected her name to come up again, and especially not during what had been such a perfect trip. "What did she want?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Amanda hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "She asked to meet with you. She didn't go into detail, but it sounds like she's going through something. She said she needed to talk to you in person." I sat there, processing her words. I couldn't imagine what Rachel could possibly need from me at this point. Our lives had taken such different paths, and I had no desire to reopen old wounds. But there was a sense of urgency in Amanda's voice, and I could tell that Rachel's request had unsettled her. "Do you think I should meet her?" I asked. Amanda looked at me thoughtfully. "I trust you, John. I know that whatever she has to say won't change anything between us. But if she's reaching out after all this time, it might be something serious. Maybe hearing her out will give her the closure she needs, just like that letter gave you yours." I nodded, appreciating Amanda's unwavering trust and support. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that meeting with Rachel might stir up things I didn't want to revisit. But I also knew that I had changed, that I was stronger now, and no matter what Rachel had to say, I was confident in who I was and the life I had built with Amanda. After discussing it with Amanda, we decided that I would meet Rachel once we got back home. There was no point in letting it ruin our trip, and I wasn't going to let anything take away from the time we were spending as a family. The rest of the trip went on without any major interruptions. We saw breathtaking views, ate at local diners, and enjoyed the simplicity of just being together. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but wonder what Rachel wanted. Had something gone wrong in her life? Was it something about her daughter, the child she had had after we divorced? I had no idea, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. When we finally returned home, I arranged to meet Rachel at a cafe downtown. It was the same place we had met years ago when she first apologized, the same place I had found a kind of closure that I didn't realize I needed at the time. I figured it was as good a place as any to hear whatever it was she had to say now. The day of the meeting came, and as I sat at the cafe waiting for her, I felt surprisingly calm. I had nothing to prove and nothing to gain from this conversation. Whatever Rachel wanted to say, it wouldn't change the course of my life. It was simply a chance for her to speak, and for me to listen. Rachel arrived a few minutes late. As she approached, I noticed the same tired look that had been on her face the last time we met. Life hadn't been kind to her, it seemed. She sat down across from me, offering a small, strained smile. "John," she began, "thanks for meeting with me." "No problem," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. What's going on? She took a deep breath before speaking again, her voice soft and hesitant. I know this is unexpected, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I'm going through something really difficult, and I didn't know who else to turn to. What's happened? I asked, not sure where this conversation was headed. Rachel paused for a long moment, as if she were trying to gather the strength to say the words. Finally, she spoke. I'm sick, John. I've been diagnosed with cancer. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and unexpected. For a few moments, I didn't know how to respond. Cancer. Of all the things I had imagined she might say, this wasn't one of them. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. What kind of cancer? It's breast cancer, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. I found out a few months ago. It's already advanced, and the doctors aren't optimistic. I could see the fear in her eyes, the vulnerability she was trying so hard to hide. Rachel had always been proud, always put up a strong front. But now, she was stripped of all that, facing something far bigger than she could handle on her own. What can I do to help? I asked, not sure what she expected from me. Rachel looked down at the table, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. I don't know, she admitted. I guess I needed to talk to someone who knew me before everything fell apart, before I ruined everything. I've been thinking a lot about the past, about the choices I made, and I realized that I've been carrying so much regret. I hurt you, John, and I hurt myself in the process. I guess I don't want to leave this world without making peace with that. Her words hit me hard, but not in the way they might have years ago. I didn't feel anger or resentment. I just felt sad. Sad for her, for the choices she had made, and for the difficult road that lay ahead of her. I had already made peace with the past, but it was clear that Rachel hadn't. And now, facing her own mortality, she was searching for some kind of resolution. I've already forgiven you, Rachel, I said gently. A long time ago. You don't have to carry that guilt anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know if that makes everything better, but it helps. We talked for a while longer, about her treatment plan, about her daughter, and about the support system she had in place. It wasn't a long conversation, but it was enough to give her the comfort she seemed to be searching for. I couldn't fix what had happened in her life, but I could offer her some peace. When we parted ways, I knew that this was likely the last time I would see Rachel. There was a finality to our meeting, an understanding that this chapter was closing for good. As I walked away from the cafe, I felt a strange mix of emotions, sadness for what she was going through, but also a deep sense of gratitude for the life I had built with Amanda. When I got home, Amanda was waiting for me, as she always was. She greeted me with a warm smile, her arms wrapping around me in a comforting embrace. How did it go? She asked softly. I sighed, resting my chin on her shoulder. It was hard. She's sick. Cancer. Amanda pulled back slightly, her expression filled with concern. I'm so sorry, John. That's awful. Yeah, I said, nodding. It is. But she's making peace with things, I think. And I think I've finally closed that chapter for good. Amanda smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. You've come a long way. I have, I agreed. And I couldn't have done it without you. We stood there for a moment, just holding each other, and in that embrace, I felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. Life was unpredictable, full of challenges and hardships, but as long as I had Amanda by my side, I knew I could face whatever came our way. The months that followed were busy, filled with the usual demands of family life. Ethan and Lily kept us on our toes, and work seemed to pile up as always. But even in the busyness, I carried a new sense of clarity with me. My life with Amanda was everything I had ever hoped for, and I knew now more than ever that I was exactly where I was meant to be. And though the past had resurfaced momentarily, I knew that it no longer held any power over me. I was free from the weight of it, free to live fully in the present, with the woman I loved and the family we had built together. Whatever the future held, I was ready for it.